Okay, so for the potjie outside, I've made a fire, dragged some of the coals underneath the potjie, put it on, and I leave it there as long as possible to heat up the potjie because we're going to sear and brown the meat just now. And then I've got my additional fire here going, putting small pieces on the whole time so that I've got a steady feed of coals, of burning coals to put underneath the potjie. So while the potjie is heating up, I'm going to insert a cork here in the lid so that I can easily pick it up because it's going to get quite hot. So there's my cork in so I can pick up my lid. Okay, cork's in the lid, potjie's nice and hot. I'm going to fetch the meat to brown the meat. Okay, for the potjie, these are the main ingredients as per the recipe. Bottle of port style wine. I'm going to season the meat now before it goes into the potjie. As with a thicker cut of meat, it's good to season liberally. We also made our stock, and I'm going to strain the stock off now. Olive oil, wait for the oil to sizzle. Traditionally in South Africa, a potjie is a cast iron pot, 3 legs. You get 3 legs, you can stand like that and you can move the coals underneath. You also get other versions that are flat bottom you can use otherwise. Some people have a contraption where the potjie hangs and you can actually move it up and down to control the heat. I just move coals in and out, as I see, because what happens is now we have high heat in the potjie, but later you'll see we're going to control the heat, so it's a very slow cooking situation. This could take anything from 3 to 6 hours. So it's a fabulous way to socialize around the potjie and the fire. Because of the size of the pot, you can actually only brown these top ends, but essentially what you're doing is you're creating flavor. Like with any stew where you brown the meat first, you're creating flavor for later on for the sauce. It renders the fat out of the shanks, the heat, so you're actually developing a nice amount of juice and oil and fat in the bottom of the pan for when you add all the rest of the ingredients. What I really like to do is before I add the other ingredients, I add chopped an onion, stir it until it's nicely golden brown. I believe this is part of your gravy. It adds thickness and flavor to your gravy because it cooks away over the 4 or 6 hours that you have the potjie on the fire. So first we put the pickling onions. Nice flavor that develops with the caramelization of the onion in the fat and the oil. I like to add a bit of rosemary as well. And then put 1 or 2 bay leaf, crush it up a bit. Stir it around. I've also stopped adding coals. I want the heat to start slowing down now. I keep the garlic just whole like this, just sliced in half. I'm a bit seasoned with a bit of freshly ground black pepper. I'm not going to season the salt now because the meat was quite generously salted earlier, seasoned, so I'm going to wait towards the end and then taste for seasoning. Okay, so now we can add back the shanks. Now you add your bottle of port wine. And finally the lamb shank stock that we made beforehand. So the potjie is now filled with the stock and the port. I'm going to add the lid now, close it up. And now the trick is to keep the heat so that it slowly sort of bubbles, almost like when you cook a stock. You want this to go very slowly. It's best to leave the potjie alone. Don't stir it. There's another way of making potjie, that's by layering your meats and your vegetables and then never stirring it. But with this particular recipe, you just pack in the meat like you've seen, put the lid on and leave it. And I'm going to add the mushrooms and the carrots in a couple of hours time when the meat's softened and we've got the juice to reside a bit. The meat's nice and soft, falling off the bone. It's now been, I think, 4 hours, and they've been cooking slowly here on the fire. I've got a slotted spoon, and I'm just lifting out the pieces of meat, trying not to break the meat off too much. And in a separate dish, I'm going to increase the heat by adding more coals to thicken and reduce the sauce. So there we've got our meat that's been resting in the oven for the last half an hour when we reduced the sauce at about 80 degrees, so it didn't cook further, it just rested. I'm now going to ladle over our sauce. You can see it's still bubbling nicely. Nice and thick. And we dress the dish with the sauce. And then we take it to the table, and it's served with crusty bread or mashed potato to mop up the sauces.